When real men can't sleep, real men do the news. To be honest, it's not that late here. It's 8:51 here, so I hope everyone is doing all right. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. I know this is an odd day to be doing the news, but I'm up, I'm antsy, and I didn't get as many shows in as I wanted to last week, so let's do the news. I have one or two that I wanted to do. This one was there from the other day, so let's clear the queue. We are going into day 10 of the government shutdown. And before I start, if you enjoy the content that I put out and you find yourself coming back to this channel often, please consider contributing either through Patreon or PayPal. It helps, keeps the show ticking along at this point. And this is user-generated content, so I do it for you guys. Not to mention, I have a bias towards doing this anyway. But that's it. Let's talk about the government shutdown. I want to talk about the politics of the government shutdown because I think the politics drives a certain degree of intractability that goes beyond this overt border wall thing. There's an underlying politics that's fascinating and that perpetuates exactly what's taking place here right now. It's not purely just about a border wall. There's also underlying politics from the standpoint of strength and the bases of each particular parties. So first, this takes place with Nancy Pelosi. And by the way, even though, look at this purely from the standpoint of politics, there are real people getting injured here from not getting paid. These guys have gone into 10 days of a government shutdown. Typically, they pay people retroactively, but with this administration, who knows? Nevertheless, this took place earlier in the month. Close. All right, I'm going to play it. Let me come on, Mike. Give me 1 second.
So I don't think we should have a debate in front of the press on this. You have the votes. You should pass it.
No, we don't have the votes, Nancy, because in the Senate we need 60 votes.
No, but in the House,
and we don't
you
have.
could bring it up right now
Yeah, but
today.
I can't. Excuse me. The House we could get passed very easily,
Okay,
and we
then
do.
do it.
But the problem is the Senate.
That's
They
not
won't
the
vote.
point, Mr. President. The point is that there are equities to be weighed.
We would get it passed very easily in the House.
That's
We
not-
would get it, Nancy. I'd have it passed in 2 seconds.
But there are no votes in the House, a majority of votes, for a wall, no matter where you start.
If I needed the votes for the wall in the House, I would have them in one session.
Well, then
would
go
be
do
done.
it. Go do it.
It doesn't help for me to take a vote in the House where I will win easily with the
You will
Republicans.
not win. The fact is, you do not have the votes in the House.
Nancy, I do.
Then-
And we need
Well, let's
border
take the
security.
vote and
Nancy,
we'll find out.
Nancy,
Let me
go.
say something, Mr. President. You just say my way or we'll shut down the government.
And if it's not good border security, I
It
won't
is
take
very
it.
good
And
border
if it's
security.
not good border
That's what
security,
border
I won't
security
take
has
it. And when you look at the job that we're doing
You
with our
just said it is
military,
effective.
can I tell you something?
Yeah, you just said it's
without a
effective.
wall, these are only areas where you have the walls.
wanna do
Where
this-
you have walls, Chuck, it's effective.
This goes on for like another 2 minutes of them going back and forth. Now, here's the catch. There are a few numbers that play into this on why these guys can all of a sudden be all as strong on this particular part. So first, Democrats take Congress. It took Congress with pretty decent numbers, which gets across the priority of the nation, or at the very least somewhat of a dislike of the Trump administration. Take a look at these numbers. So these are recent polls. Jesus Christ. Here we are. The survey found 56% of respondents do not support the president's proposal to construct a wall along the southern border, compared to 44% that do. Erecting the border wall is only slightly more popular according to the poll. Only 46% of respondents support the proposal, while 54% oppose it. The majority of U.S. voters surveyed, 58%, said Trump should withdraw his demand for the border wall funding, while 42% said that the president should not give in. Now, if you remember, when last time this took place, Democrats shut down based on DACA funding, but they opened it within, over the weekend. It was a limousine shutdown. Within a few days, they opened it and looked at their bases. See, finally, we shut it down. What else do you want? But on this, these guys are inflexible. They're willing to stand up there toe-to-toe to the president and essentially you could say, yell down the president to some degree. It's not just this poll, though. It goes beyond that. Back during the 2016 campaign, when Hillary Clinton was running in the race, Hillary Clinton ran a scorched earth campaign that essentially made the argument that Donald Trump is going to be the second coming of Hades, the bringer of rain and destruction. There's going to be fire coming from the sky when Donald Trump takes office at his inauguration. He will essentially leave the United States in trouble. Despite that, there's been multiple problems with Trump that I've detailed my issues with Trump in multiple videos. I think I derided him as a reality show host. But let's be honest, that has not necessarily been indicative of reality. Whether that's been indicative of reality or not, that is their reality. And in addition to pushing the Russia stuff, they have been screaming that they want resistance. Now, up to this point, the Democrats have been somewhat squeamish on this, because particularly in areas where they find themselves to be somewhat weak in Trump territory, resistance may mean you losing your seat. In this case, though, with them winning the House of Representatives, and with this particular issue on shutting the entire government down, and the majority of the public blaming the president, you get their resistance. They get to have this big spat with the president of the United States, and then having this big spat with the president of the United States be the resistance that the people have wanted from day one on a particular issue that they're entirely, for the most part, safe. From Trump's standpoint, Trump has made a campaign promise that I am going to build a wall. In fact, I'm going to build a wall, and Mexico is going to pay for the fact that I'm building a wall. Well, that sounds great, except Mexico is not going to pay for that. He knew it was a lie the moment that he uttered it, but it was a nice soundbite. Of the items that Trump could enact from the standpoint of a presidency, this is one of the issues that he believes that he needs to enact, not to mention this overt, is over the top, and there's video with him screaming at the top of his lungs that he was going to build this wall. Everything from the standpoint of now needs to be looked at in the context of an election that's coming up in 2020. A vulnerable president is doing his best to maintain his seat, and in trying to maintain his seat, he's focusing on the items that his base essentially supports. Not just his base supports. Take a look at this. Here's another poll on this, because I think this poll sums it up even better. On a list of 6 major issues, Republican echoed Trump. 6 in 10 GOP voters identified that the top priority is illegal immigration, including fulfilling the president's campaign promise to build a wall on the Mexican border. That's amazing. Those people are living in a completely different reality. They probably don't even know any illegal immigrants, and yet they're terrified of the illegal immigrants that they don't know. It's a conceptual thing. Only 5% of Democrats agree that immigration should be the first on the list of Congress. So understand what's taking place. 95% of Democrats agree that something else is far more important than dealing with the border issue. Whereas 60% of Republicans think that this is the number one issue. From the standpoint of Trump's base, it doesn't matter what the media is putting out on this. His base is on board with saying, yes, we need to build a border wall. He can pick a fight on this because from the standpoint of him, he's in safe territory with his base. The overarching public itself may disagree with this, but the overarching public itself, many of those people weren't going to vote for Donald Trump anyway. And between those two things, he is trying to shore up his base. To some degree, this is a battle of the base being played out in this big splashy show of the government being shut down over a border wall. It's not fully a border wall. If the Democrats were in a weaker position, the Democrats would have accepted the $2.5 million for the border wall, or the money for the border wall, but they are not in a weaker position. All the incentives from the standpoint of Democratic politics, particularly in the context of their base, is on board for them being inflexible. By the same token, even though Donald Trump may be in a worse scenario in the overarching polls and the overriding polls, from the standpoint of his base, this is a campaign promise, and this is a campaign promise that he sees is dead set on enacting. I gotta be honest, I don't know if this works long term though. So here's another point. This is what I mean by resistance also. Nearly 8 in 10 Republicans say they're concerned that congressional Democrats will go too far in investigating Trump. Democrats, on the other hand, by more than 2 to 1, 56% to 24%, said they're concerned that congressional Democrats won't go far enough. They're concerned that these guys are weak, and they want these guys to be stronger from the standpoint of investigating the Trump administration. I'm trying to get across this idea that all the incentives from the standpoint of the Democratic Party, be it its base, is on board for being inflexible. They don't want a dime to go towards a border that they don't think is necessary. And this allows them the pissing match that they get to show in big, glossy colors, them antagonizing and being against the president on this. Who knows how long Democrats resolve will hold out on this particular point. I gotta be honest, that border wall is the dumbest thing that I've ever heard of. And even people who are associated with it have owned up to the fact that it's not going to even be a border wall. Take a look at this. I think it's this one. Right here. So this was Lindsey Graham. Graham was echoing Republican talking points that the Trump demand for a quote-unquote wall does not in fact constitute a demand for a continuous barrier. Outgoing White House Chief of Staff John Kelly admitted in an interview published on Sunday the proposal for increased border security was quote-unquote not a wall. But Democrats, when pointing to Trump's campaign promise that Mexico would pay for the wall, contend there is little need for any form of barrier. Yeah, and they're solidified in a larger voting population, meaning the majority of voters saying, look, we don't necessarily need this, but we will be okay if you compromise on it. But the compromise doesn't necessarily apply. This is something that they intend to win. And look, to be fair, you have the White House. Republicans have the White House. They have the House of Representatives. They have the Senate. And they have the Supreme Court. It is your job to keep the government open, not the job of the minority party in this case. So I don't necessarily think they're insane on this. Not to mention, all of the politics, again, go towards them not giving a dime to that wall. I mean, after all, the president said Mexico is going to pay for it. Let Mexico pay for it. But Democrats, when not pointing to Trump's campaign promise that Mexico would pay for the wall, contend there is little need for any form of barrier. Voters appear to agree, with 56% of Americans opposing Trump's idea, according to the Harvard-Harris poll released on Friday. Furthermore, Democrats have little reason to concede anything. They won overwhelming victories in November elections by opposing Trump's immigration proposal. A Reuters ISPUS poll found this week that 47% of Americans blame Trump for the shutdown, 33% blame Democrats. Not only is the larger voting population on the side of the Democrats on this particular issue, meaning you've shut down the government, literally, for your own pet project from the standpoint of the campaign. Their base is on board for this. Their base has been wanting this for the past 2 years. They've been screaming resistance with their eyes bleeding. And now you have this overt way that gives red meat to the base while simultaneously being on a solid foot from what the public sees this as. Yes, Donald Trump is being powered by his base to some degree in spite of what the public wants. I don't know how long that lasts. And I got to be honest, I'm Republicans are on dicey ground here. I don't know how long Americans are going to be okay with the government being shut down. Especially for something like a border wall. It's just fucking nonsense. Utter nonsense. Let's see, who's here? Oh, wow, we have people here tonight. I didn't think anybody was going to care about this. When the majority of people here illegally came on work visas, a wall is pretty damn dumb. Yeah, the wall thing is nonsense. The wall thing is purely there just as this kind of macho campaign thing that he ran, and he wants to make sure he gets his campaign promise in. He knows that the election is coming up. He knows that he's vulnerable. The stock market is tanking. And he's trying to show up his campaign promises. I mean, this is a guy who gave himself a magnificent tax cut while putting the burden on the backs of the American worker. He did not live up to his expectations. Now, from the standpoint of pulling troops out of Syria and Afghanistan, I gave him tepid applause on that, providing that he's not trying to replace them with Blackwater or whatever the name of the group is now. But let's be honest, he's fucking over the American worker. This idea that Trump is fighting the globalists is nonsense. In the same way that lefties were taken in by Obama, you have right-wingers that was taken in by Trump because he seemed to be something different in the way that he talked and articulated himself, his language. I'm sorry, that's not what you got. You sold a bill of goods. Just saying. Just saying. Alright. I have one or two more that I wanted to do. Let's see. No, Jimmy is good value. I like Jimmy. Ladders, tunnels, ropes, hot air balloons all beat a stupid wall. The wall thing is nonsense, man. Like, I know that, you know, and you can't even put a wall there because you need to see across it. Even at worst case scenario, they're talking about a fence. I'm sorry, this was a campaign pledge that was divorced from reality itself. Ultimately, he did this purely for the standpoint of politics. And now, for that standpoint of politics, he's shutting the government down. I mean, this is insane. Absolutely insane. I trust the closest conservative wing of the progressive faction sent their video apologies towards Jamarl and Jimmy and Mail for exposing Beto. Yeah, the Beto thing is, they're acting as if, I have a video on that coming up, they're acting as if there's that Beto supporters or Bernie supporters just randomly attack Beto, as if exposing his record and saying this is what Beto is for and this is what Beto is against is somehow an assault on Beto. If Beto is not for Medicare for all, then I have no need to even go further in the standpoint of considering Beto. And people need to consider that. Do you want somebody who's a blank slate like Obama was? And while I know some Democrats are ecstatic about that, I would imagine that real lefties are not. The issues between Beto and Sanders has everything to do with policy. It has nothing to do with personality. These people are insane. Abrams. See, I don't know what Abrams' thing is. For me, Sanders is something that I know for the most part. But I don't know what Abrams' policies and all are. Illegal immigration is a 40-year low. Yes, that's kind of my point. This is nonsense. Look, the Democratic Party has been trying to find a Russian, the ubiquitous Russian, under every bed, cover, sewer hole, and everything else to explain their failures. Again, the country itself looking externally for something to explain their failures. Now, if Hillary Clinton wanted to explain her failures, there's a long list. Not going to Wisconsin is probably a big one. Picking Tim Kaine is probably another one. Cheating Bernie Sanders is probably another one. Running an election while you're under criminal investigation, hey, there's another one. Maybe not having your emails exposed to foreign actors, there's another one. There is a list of items. Even not being Hillary Clinton. Hey, there's another one, seeing that you were one of the most hated candidates in history. But on that list, if you need to find something that's external from your own failures, the Republican Party cheated you magnificently. The number of people that they were able to kick off the rolls with voter suppression techniques, that's the place where you would look more than anywhere else, even with Jill Stein trying to get a recount. Again, Jill Stein had to push that through because Hillary Clinton was too skittish to do it. There are areas where you can look to find things that were problematic in regards to the election. But this external need, or this need to constantly look outside of oneself and outside of one's country in order to come up to why something failed, why something didn't work, why something was a fuck up, how I lost. It's problematic. The Republicans are looking at immigrants, Democrats are looking at Russians. This stuff is nonsense. The issues that are affecting you and your country, in your particular country, when I say a better world is possible, that means dealing with the shit that's going on internally. That's not this ubiquitous foe on the outside of us that are trying to get at us. There are things and processes that take place within the country itself that are driving certain failures in the country itself. Having a political system that runs on cash is one of them. It's probably one of the top line one. So yeah. Just saying. All right. This one is gone far, far too long. I can't believe that many people here for this particular video. I gotta be honest. I had no I didn't think anybody was gonna watch this video. Alright, you never know, man. If you enjoy the content, please feel free to share, like, subscribe, and you guys can always support through PayPal or Patreon. Thanks all. I'll be back in a few. I have a few videos set for today. I'll see you shortly.